Good evening. You're watching The Big Story with Haryanto Duman. I'm Olivia Quay. Subscribe to the Straits Times channel so you never miss a single episode.
Transport Minister Khaw Boon Wan is retiring from politics after 19 years. In a valedictory letter released to the media, Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong thanked Mr. Khaw, who is also Coordinating Minister for Infrastructure, for his lifetime of public service to Singapore.
PM Lee said Mr. Khaw was in his cabinet since day one and has been one of his most reliable lieutenants. Mr. Khaw was an MP in Sembawang GRC before Parliament was dissolved on Tuesday. In a farewell post on Facebook, Mr. Khaw wrote, "I travel light, but I shall disembark fully laden with friendship and great memories."
The People's Action Party will be fielding 27 new candidates in the general election on July 10th. The final batch sees individuals from various professions like law and marketing and includes the country's first woman Brigadier General. Here's Dylan Ang with more.
The People's Action Party introduced 8 more new faces this morning. Minister for the Environment and Water Resources Masagos Zulkifli introduced 4 candidates in the first morning session, while Minister for Trade and Industry Chan Chun Sing introduced the other 4 in a second press conference.
The purpose of joining politics must be to serve the people and to serve Singapore. They represent Singapore, they represent Singaporeans. They understand, they feel the fears, concerns and aspirations of our people.
The new candidates are Ms. Gan Xiao Huang, the first woman Brigadier General in Singapore. She is now Deputy CEO of the National Trades Union Congress Employment and Employability Institute. Ms. Rachel Ong Sin Yen, Chief Executive of consultancy firm Rohe Corporation. Mr. Muhammad Shahril Muhammad Taha, Vice President for the Strategy and Project Management Office at Singapore Aero Engine Services. And Mr. Alex Yeo Shing Chai, Director at law firm Niru & Co. Ms. Mariam Jafar, Singapore Managing Director and Partner at Boston Consulting Group. Mr. Sean Huang, Director of the Enterprise Development at Temasek Holdings. Ms. Carrie Tan, Founding Executive Director of charity Daughters of Tomorrow. And Ms. Chan Hui Yu, Marketing Director at Jingsling Marketing.
Workers' Party Chief Pritam Singh today confirmed the team looking to retain alternate GRC. It will comprise Mr. Singh, Party Chairman Sylvia Lim, Mr. Faisal Manap, Mr. Leon Pereira and Mr. Gerald Giam.
Ms. Lim said WP is planning to release its manifesto this weekend. Both announcements came as the party unveiled 5 more candidates for this election.
We are fielding 21 candidates, and as EI correctly points out, that we have made a 1/3 representation in Parliament, a medium-term goal. But a lot of it is contingent on the quality of people, the quality of Singaporeans that are prepared to stand up for the Workers' Party. We have a good slate for this general elections. I look forward to all these candidates representing the party well and persuading Singaporeans to vote for us. But we will continue on track to ensure that we can at least have 1/3 of that House of Parliament in opposition hands.
The WP candidates introduced today are Mr. Dennis Tan, who will be contesting Hougang SMC. This is his second election, having run in Fengshan SMC in 2015. He was also a non-constituency MP. Mr. Dylan Ng is also running in his second election. He contested Marine Parade GRC in the 2015 election. The 44-year-old has spent 20 years in the banking and finance sector. It's the second GE for Mr. Ron Tan as well, after being fielded in Nee Soon GRC in 2015. He works at the National University Health Systems Research Office. Contesting her first GE, Ms. Raisha Begum Farid Khan is the founder of Reina Movement. The 26-year-old is the daughter of ex-presidential hopeful Farid Khan. And WP's last candidate unveiled today is Mr. James Lim, an Associate Professor of Economics at ASIC Business School.
The Progress Singapore Party also unveiled its final round of 6 candidates during a virtual press conference today. This brings the total number of candidates to 24. Mr. Lim Che Hong is an author and former program coordinator and trainer at the Silver Generation Office. Ms. Kala Manikam, an adult educator and a former Singapore Armed Forces officer. Also in the lineup is PSP's Assistant Secretary General, Mr. Leong Man Wai. He is the founder of venture capital firm Timber Capital. Next, Mr. Terence Soon is a pilot with Singapore Airlines. Mr. Abdul Rahman Muhammad is a fire safety engineer and member of PSP's Central Executive Committee. And finally, Mr. Jeffrey Koo Po Tiong, the APEC Chief Marketing Officer for multinational insurance firm ED.
Well, Singapore's newest party, Red Dot United, unveiled the last member of its team to run in the 5-seat Jurong GRC. He is theatre director Alec Tok, a 55-year-old Yale University graduate. Mr. Tok directed Singapore's first Chinese musical, December Rains, and lived in the US for 15 years. He joins Miss Liana Damira and Mr. Nicholas Tang, who were both introduced on Wednesday. Miss Liana is an entrepreneur and author. Once homeless, she received the Women of Resilience Award from the Association of Women for Action and Research. Meanwhile, 28-year-old Mr. Tang is a legal engineer. The other 2 members of the Jurong team are former Progress Singapore Party members Ravi Philemon and Michelle Lee.
We're now joined by Deputy Political Editor Royston Sim. Roy, first of all, can we get your reaction to Mr. Khaw's retirement? After all, he has held several key ministries.
Hi, Haryanto. I think Mr. Khaw's retirement doesn't come quite as a surprise. We had heard from party sources that he was tipped to step down, and he has introduced his a new face on the ground. That's Miss Polly Sun, who was unveiled yesterday. She's a VP at Changi Airport Group. So she has been on the ground and shadowing him at constituency events. So the talk on the ground was that Mr. Khaw was going to step down. So that part of it didn't come as a surprise. But I think he will leave a big gap that will be hard for the PAP to fill. Mr. Khaw, over the years, has built up a reputation as the party's Mr. Fix-It. Basically, he has gone on to take all of the hot portfolios. He was in the health ministry, and after that, in 2011, housing was a big issue. There was unhappiness about affordability and the supply of housing. So Mr. Khaw was sent to the housing ministry, and he ramped up the HDB building programs, and he also introduced new policies. And I think at the end of in 2015, by the time 2015 came around, I think some of the unhappiness and quite a bit of the unhappiness over the housing issue had waned. And in 2015, one of the hot issues was transport, and specifically the reliability of the MRT. So after the GE, Mr. Khaw basically volunteered to go to the Transport Ministry to fix the issues there. And I think now that we've come to the next GE, he has basically managed to do that. The MRT reliability has climbed. It's exceeded more than 1 million MKBF, mean kilometers between failure. And that's across all the MRT lines, so your older north, south, and east-west lines, and also the newer northeast lines and Circle Line and Downtown Line. So I think some of it is Mr. Khaw. I mean, I would also say that, of course, some of the programs to renew the MRT lines were put in place before his time. So like the re-signalling projects, the replacement of the third rail, and so on. But there's no doubt that under his tenure, the MRT reliability has improved.
Right. Well, earlier today, PAP introduced all their new candidates, 27 of them. So how do you think the party did in terms of attracting a range of talented people to serve?
I think the PAP has really, try to make a concerted effort to diversify its slate. Out of the 27, 15 are from the private sector, 3 are from the social sector, and the rest are a mix of public servants and also those from the formerly from the military. So, and the slate, the age ranges from 30 to 55, the oldest being Dr. Tan Si Leng, who is set to take over from ESM Goh Chok Tong. And I think Dr. Tan is the kind of candidate that the PAP has been hoping to attract but hasn't had much success in doing so thus far. He is, the group chief executive, or he was the group chief executive of IHH Healthcare. And traditionally they've struggled to attract your people from the private sector, like the top leaders in the private sector. So that's an interesting addition to their slate. And also they have gone to get faces like Miss Carrie Tan, who was introduced today. She is founded a non-profit, Daughters of Tomorrow, and there are a couple more like her. So it does seem like they're trying to get candidates who are on the ground and who represent, and this is something that their second Assistant Secretary General, Mr. Chan Chun Sing, said, that they're trying to attract a diverse slate of candidates, that can represent, the different segments of Singaporeans. And it would seem that based on this slate, they have, managed to widen their reach. That said, I mean, you still have your more, I guess, people from the military. Like one of the candidates introduced today was the former Air Force Brigadier General Ms. Gan Xiao Huang. So she is now with the Employment and Employability Institute. So she sort of, I guess, fits the mold of what you would think of candidates, PAP candidates who are sort of parachuted in at the last minute. But she's also another interesting addition to watch.
All right. Roy, WP has revealed its slate to contest alternate GRC. Who do you think PAP will field to face off against WP? Are we expecting any familiar faces perhaps?
Based on what we are hearing, the PAP slate, I think, will comprise 3 of the candidates who contested in the 2015 election. So that will be Mr. Victor Lai, Mr. Chua Eng Leong, and also Mr. Shamsul Kama. And we expect that they'll be joined by Ms. Chan Hui Yue, who was one of the new faces introduced today, candidates introduced today. And rounding up the 5-man slate would be Mr. Alex Yeo. Yeah. And they would replace Mr. Yeo Guat Kwang, who contested in 2015, and also Mr. Murali Pillay, who is now the MP at Bukit Batok. But of course, I would like to caveat that, until nomination day and the lineups are fixed, anything can happen. It's possible that there will be changes, but based on what we are hearing, that's the slate that we expect for now in Aljunied GRC for the PAP.
Right. Well, let's look ahead to nomination day then. We're just days away from that on next Tuesday, June the 30th, when the parties will confirm the lineup for their contested constituencies. What can we expect over this weekend, though?
So tomorrow, Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong, who is the Secretary General of the PAP, he will launch the party's manifesto at 10 a.m. in the morning. And over the weekend after that, the party will unveil its lineups in the different constituencies. So, for instance, in the different GRCs, what's their slate, who are they going to field, for example, in East Coast, in Marsiling UT GRC. So they will unveil their lineups, and in doing so, they will also announce which are the MPs who are going to be retiring and stepping down this round. So that's for the PAP side. For the WP, Party Chairman Sylvia Lim has also said that they will unveil their manifesto sometime this weekend, and the WP will also continue to introduce its candidates for the coming election over the weekend. And for the other parties, I think you can expect them to go on walkabouts and ramp up their engagement with the voters on the ground as we move towards nomination day.
Well, thank you so much, Royston, for coming on to speak with us. We were speaking to Deputy Political Editor Royston Sim. Of course, don't forget to head to our GE2020 microsite for all the news leading up to polling day on July 10th.
Moving on, in his first interview since his retirement from politics was announced, former Workers' Party chief Lau Tia Kiang said he is leaving without regrets.
Having been involved in politics for almost 40 years, with 29 of them as an MP, Mr. Lau added he felt his work was done and he had achieved the twin goals he set for himself.
The first was to secure a GRC for WP, and the second was to renew the ranks of WP and hand over to a new generation of younger leaders.
In 2018, Mr. Lau stepped down as Secretary General, making way for current Chief Mr. Pritam Singh. Yesterday's interview was also the first time that he was speaking to the media after a bad fall in April left him with a traumatic brain injury.
He shared that he is doing well, except for the loss of his sense of smell. On the candidates that WP will be fielding, Mr. Lau said they have the relevant experience to hold their own in Parliament.
I think the experience, political experience you're talking about, we should look at the collective experience of the party. They are currently MPs in Parliament, and for instance, I think Leong is replacing, I think, probably Soma or whoever. Leong is already in Parliament, so he already has experience there. And Gerald was NCMP before, and I think if you recall 2011, the period where NCMP, we were going to attack upside down here and there. So in terms of experience, political experience in Parliament, they are not lacking in the first place. Danny Stone, who is replacing Peng Wat. Danny Stone is currently also in Parliament, and he has done well in Parliament, and he worked very hard in Hougang. I mean, going around with Peng, house raising and do many other things as well. So I would think that in terms of experience, I don't think it has much deficit because of that people like myself, Peng Hua and the others are not standing.
Meanwhile, the Health Ministry confirmed 219 new COVID-19 cases today. 6 are community cases. 5 are Singaporeans or permanent residents, and 1 is a work pass holder.
Migrant workers living in dormitories make up the remaining cases. Singapore's total count is now about 43,000.
In other news, the number of phishing attempts to trick users to give up personal information tripled in 2019 from the year before. According to a Cybersecurity of Singapore report released today, there were 47,500 cases last year compared with 16,100 cases in 2018. This spike mirrors global trends, with worldwide attacks last year hitting a high. Local phishing attempts also doubled during the months when people had to stay home as part of Singapore's response to COVID-19.
Shoppers will be able to compare grocery prices across some 280 supermarkets with the nationwide launch of mobile app Price Kaki. The app will have information on more than 4,000 items provided by major supermarkets like NTUC FairPrice, Giant, Prime Supermarket and Sheng Siong. Price Kaki users can submit updated price information and be alerted to price changes. They can check the prices of certain dishes at 94 hawker centres as well.
In an interview with the Straits Times yesterday, Senior Minister of State for Trade and Industry Chee said the government must push for business transformation with a pro-enterprise environment. As such, the pro-enterprise panel looks into reducing regulatory barriers for businesses trying new concepts.
Mr. Chee also spoke about how companies can bring along their workers on this transformation journey. Here are the highlights from his interview with journalist Suen Tan.
SMS, thank you for joining us today. We know the COVID-19 pandemic has affected many businesses and workers. So maybe you can first tell us how the government has helped to create a pro-enterprise environment to help them, especially as they try to innovate now.
We started this pro-enterprise panel quite some years ago. And over the years, this has been a concerted effort involving many different government agencies, as well as private sector partners. So before COVID-19 started, we have been looking at what are some of the ways in which we can help to reduce business costs, especially regulatory costs, and also how do we support new business models, new innovations, and to give our companies, especially SMEs, more opportunities to be able to demonstrate their capabilities and to build up a track record that they can then take their products and services and go overseas. We have been gathering feedback from businesses. Where are the pain points? Where are the areas that we can do better to help them? And based on this feedback, we then have discussions with the regulatory agencies to see how we can review our rules, how we can cut red tape, how we can enhance our licensing process. Besides reducing business costs, actually the pro-enterprise panel is also looking at two other important areas to support our SMEs. The first is how to facilitate new business models. And the second is how do we provide opportunities for them to demonstrate their capabilities and build out a track record. We want to encourage people to start up. We want to encourage entrepreneurship. We want to lower the cost of entry.
Besides some of these regulatory barriers that you are mentioning, what are some of the biggest challenges that businesses face when they try to digitalize and innovate themselves?
Now, many of the SMEs are aware that they have to adapt to this new normal. And before COVID, many of them already started. But with COVID, there's now an even greater impetus and urgency. It's not easy. You're talking about a new way of doing things, right? You have to abandon some of your previous processes, or you have to significantly modify some of them. So from the business owner's point of view, it is understandable why they are concerned. So that's where I think the partnership with our trade associations and our SME centers, and also some of the solutions providers, to bring easy to adapt, easy to adopt type of solutions to our SMEs. It doesn't help us if there are only very few companies that have adopted these solutions, and even if they have done very well, it's only a small fraction of the entire SME population. What we really need is to be able to speed up and scale up the adoption. The other point I will highlight is this, that very often there's also a misperception that technology is the solution, like a silver bullet, and that is actually not true. Many of the successful adopters of technology have told us that they don't start by asking which technology should I adopt. They start by asking what solutions do I need to better meet the needs of my customer. And this is where I think design and design thinking comes in very useful. Technology by itself sometimes is very cold, and you lack that human touch. Whereas if you have human-centric design combined with technology, I think that's really a more powerful and integrated approach.
How do companies also ensure that they bring workers along on this journey? Because as we know, the workers are the things that make the company keep going, right?
Successful enterprise transformation must go hand in hand with skills upgrading. Earlier this year, we announced that we are going to have the next bound of Skills Future. And the next bound will involve a greater emphasis on enterprise-led skills upgrading for their workers. And we wanted to do this because we think it's very important for employers, for enterprises to take ownership. Now, after all, by upgrading their workers, they also become more competitive as a company, and productivity will go up. With COVID, one of the setbacks is that we now have a situation where many of our companies have less buffer because their resources are being affected, profit bottom lines are being affected. So many of them have now got greater constraints to implement some of these plans that earlier they were very keen to come on board. If we don't relook at our support for companies and workers for these different programs, in the current environment, it may be difficult for companies to come on board. And we understand that. So SSG has done a review, and we will be looking at how we can enhance the support given so that we don't lose the momentum of being able to grow this continuing education and training ecosystem that involves not just our IHLs and training centers, but also involve our companies. They are absolutely critical piece of the whole jigsaw puzzle, because without the enterprises coming in, we would not have enough on the job training opportunities. And workers need to also feel that what they train in will be relevant to what they're doing and that they'll be recognized for their enhanced skills by the employers. COVID has brought about new challenges, but we must overcome these challenges, and we will.
So the National Jobs Council was also recently formed. So do you have any updates on the plans that it has in terms of reskilling workers?
There will be 24 GE2020 Jobs and Skills Centres that will be set up, one in each town. And the whole purpose of this is so that we bring the service and the jobs down to the community level to make it more accessible, more convenient for our residents. So if you need a job, you're looking for work, you know where to turn to, you know where to get help. And these centres will also be organising job fairs. And that's a very important part of translating those numbers into actual offerings. So we'll be bringing in different partners, job placement companies, employers, both public and private sectors, both permanent positions as well as temporary positions, and also traineeship positions, because you need a range. What is also very important is to be able to work with different sectors, because the opportunities and the jobs that open up, every sector is not quite the same, both in terms of numbers and in terms of the skills required. So I think we have to also look at not just the aggregate, but to look at sector by sector, where are the jobs, what kind of jobs, and what kind of skills do the employers look for. And if there's a gap between what the workers are able to have and offer at this point in time and what the employers are looking for, that's where training comes in. That's where Skills Future comes in. So I think these are the practical ways in which we want to be able to help Singaporeans to be able to tide over this difficult period. But very importantly, we must ensure that our companies are able to transform, our economy is able to remain competitive, because the subsequent recovery and job creation still require engines of growth. And engines of growth are not going to come automatically. They are going to come from a lot of hard work through the enterprise transformation and skills upgrading efforts.
That was Senior Minister of State for Trade and Industry, Chee Hong-tat. His full interview is on our YouTube channel.
Let's take a look at the global headlines. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has called Beijing a threat, whom he accused of stealing intellectual property in Europe and abusing the rules-based trading system to protect its economies. Talking to a think tank event via video, Mr. Pompeo said that the United States and the European Union need a shared understanding of China in order to resist it. While the EU sees Beijing as a partner in fighting climate change, it is also an economic rival and shares many of Washington's concerns about what it says are predatory Chinese practices to dominate strategic industries. Mr. Pompeo said he had accepted a proposal by the EU Foreign Policy Chief to create a formal US-EU dialogue on China and would travel to Europe soon to host the first session.
The summer sun in the UK led to a major incident being declared after thousands ignored safe distancing to flock to Bournemouth Beach on the south coast. UK Health Secretary Matt Hancock has said the government has the power to shut down beaches if necessary, and said in an interview, "If we see a spike in the number of cases, we will take action." Chief Medical Advisor Professor Chris Whitty warned that people must follow social distancing guidance even while enjoying the sun, or COVID-19 cases will rise again. A spokesman for Bournemouth Council said they were absolutely appalled at the scenes witnessed on our beaches.
Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has rejected calls to swap an imprisoned Huawei executive for 2 Canadian citizens held by Beijing, saying such a move would set a bad precedent. Shortly after Vancouver police arrested Huawei CFO Meng Wanzhou in December 2018, Beijing detained 2 Canadian men on security charges. Last week, they were charged with suspected spying. A group of 19 prominent figures, including former cabinet ministers and diplomats, wrote to Mr. Trudeau this week urging a halt to extradition proceedings. Mr. Trudeau said the signatories were wrong to call for her release and that such a move would endanger the millions of Canadians who live and travel overseas every year, adding, quote, "We cannot allow political pressures or random arrests of Canadian citizens to influence the functioning of our justice system."
Liverpool's 30-year wait for a Premier League title has come to an end thanks to Manchester City's 2-1 loss to Chelsea last night. The loss meant Liverpool, who were 23 points ahead of City, couldn't be caught and saw thousands celebrate outside of Liverpool's home ground of Anfield.
Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong also congratulated Liverpool fans in a Facebook post, saying he hopes they're observing safe distancing precautions while celebrating.
Sports correspondent David Lee joins us to talk about this momentous occasion. David, mindset, manager, their star players, the depth of the squad. Liverpool boasted many strengths this season, but what do you think was the most crucial ingredient in their title win?
Right, hi guys. So first of all, congratulations to Liverpool and the fans around the world. You know, nobody in their right minds can look at the massive gap, like you mentioned, between Liverpool and Manchester City and still say the title is not well deserved. Well, all the factors you mentioned are key ingredients which cannot be belittled in this triumph. You talk about mindset, and we are reminded of last season's agonizing finish. You know, when they collected 97 points and still finished second. How do you come back from that to fight for another 9 months? You know, do the team believe that Liverpool are jinxed? No, they came back stronger with another remarkable unbeaten run. And then you talk about the manager, right? And he really has been key in bringing back the energy levels as a great manager. Jurgen Klopp buys into the players and fans, and they in turn buy back into him. And it also happens that he has a sharp eye in the transfer market as well. As an attacking-minded manager, you know, that was what he sorted out first, with Mo Salah, Sadio Mane, and Roberto Firmino providing the focal points in attack, and then fullbacks Andrew Robertson and Trent Alexander-Arnold supporting from wide positions. And then he fixed the defensive side of things, you know, with Fabinho, Alisson, and Virgil van Dijk, the final pieces of the title-winning jigsaw, because they then stopped conceding the silly goals, you know, that have been the source of so many heartbreaks through the years. You know, and this season he added depth with players like Naby Keita, Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain. So you can see his thought process throughout all these years. But to get the right players in and fit square pegs into square holes, Klopp has been instrumental. But at the end of the day, the players are the ones who went out there and got the job done. So every credit to them. Can I pick out a standout player? I can't, because how do you pick Mo Salah over Van Dijk, for example? Do you overlook the influence of captain Jordan Henderson? I can't. Even bench players like Divock Origi have come in to contribute. So this truly is a great team effort.
And David, there were celebrations in Merseyside, here in Singapore as well. Besides the long 30-year wait for the EPL title, why is this so significant for the fans?
Look, have you guys waited for a boy or a girl to go out on a date with you for weeks or months? Have you failed a driving license time and again and tried to go for it? Or have you waited for that promotion for years? So this is 30 years we are talking about. You know, children have become parents, and an entire generation of Liverpool fans have had to endure taunts by rival fans, you know. And this is Liverpool we are talking about, a club of such rich winning history. I was talking to Ray Houghton, a former Liverpool player who was part of the team that last won the league in 1990, and he told me the expectations at the club. You know, winning the league was their job. If they finished second, they were nowhere. Of course, this is not to say that they would win it every season, but they are expected to. And more often than not, in those years in the 70s and 80s, they delivered at least once every 2 or 3 years. So to go year after year for 30 years and endure such disappointment time and again, but still sticking it through with their club and finally seeing them reach the promised land, I can only imagine how emotional it must be for them.
Right, of course. Well, the champions traditionally go on a bus tour around the city after their win. When Liverpool won the Champions League title last season, the streets were absolutely packed. What will happen to their celebrations this time, you think?
okay, obviously the world is a different place from what it was a year ago, but I doubt the coronavirus is going to stop the outpouring of emotions from rabid football fans in Liverpool especially. This is not to say it's the right thing to do, but already as you read, huge crowds are celebrating deep into the night in Liverpool. It is a shame that, you know, loyal fans and the players will not get to celebrate with each other at Anfield immediately. But, you know, this title is permanent. Nobody is going to take it away from them. And I'm sure there will be a big party when the virus is contained.
David, now 30 years, they've already won the title. So what's next for the club, for Liverpool?
Right, it is fair to wonder if the players, will take their foot off the pedal, take it easy after, going at it with such intensity for 2 years. But there's also every chance Liverpool will become a dynasty of, will bring a dynasty of dominance like what we have seen with Manchester United, Arsenal, Chelsea, and Man City over the years. I feel the key is if Klopp stays and builds on this success, or if he thinks that he has achieved all he can with this club and move on, which obviously also means that some players may follow him out of Anfield. As we have seen with top teams, stability and continuity are key to success. And if Klopp stays, I feel he's very likely to find a way to convince the players that this is only the beginning.
Well, it's been a pleasure, David. Thanks for coming on to the show. We've been speaking to our sports correspondent, David Lee, on Liverpool being crowned Premier League champions after 30 years.
So those are our top stories for today. Bookmark our GE2020 microsite to follow our live blog and get all the latest election news.
And of course, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel by hitting the red button below if you haven't done so. Once again, I'm Haryanto Diman with Olivia Quay. We will be back next week. Have a good weekend.